afternoon, class. I just want to thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to my briefing. My name is Melissa Johnson, and I am a senior at Troy University, majoring in Spanish with a leadership development minor. Today I'll be talking about how a leadership development minor enhances one's ability to teach. The objective of this briefing is for each listener to understand the impact of a leadership development minor in everyday life. After this briefing, you will understand as future teachers how a leadership development minor helps you recognize an audience, prepare a lesson plan, and finally present that information. A leadership development minor is beneficial in every aspect of life. At some point, everyone is placed in a teaching role. My first point is recognize the audience. It's crucial for teachers to recognize the audience. The first question any teacher should ask prior to teaching the class would be, who is listening to my presentation? It's important to know ahead of time who's listening, whether it be high school students, college students, or teachers. We also need to consider the demographics of each person or of the audience, the age, the gender, the social class, the education. This is things that you learn to get to know that person. That way, whenever you're speaking to your audience, you're not coming out blind. You know a little bit about them and what their interests are. Once we know some of the demographic variables, it's easier to talk to the people we know. For example, it's easier for me to talk to someone when I know some of the things they like or things they like to talk about, because I can relate to them. Rather, if I don't know you and you're kind of like a stranger to me, I'm not going to know what to talk about, because I could be talking about something that you don't care anything about, you have no interest in. So always try to learn some of the demographic variables of your audience. That way it's easier for you to talk to them, and you'll do a better job speaking to someone when you know their interests than you would when you don't know anything. Secondly, it's very, very important to establish a common ground. Relate the lesson to their interests. For example, some of you are going to be math teachers, history teachers, science teachers, but for me, I'm going to be a Spanish teacher. How am I, as a Spanish teacher, going to tell little Johnny how Spanish is going to benefit him later in life? You know, one of the biggest things that we face in society today is we have a huge diversity of people here in the U.S., and you never know when you're going to need to learn another language to be able to communicate with people. One of the benefits for me, you know, as a Spanish major and being fluent in Spanish, is you're going to get hired before someone that doesn't know another language. Or whenever you're looking for a job, it's easier for you when you have more to show, like knowing a second language. Once you relate the lesson to their interests, you always want to emphasize the similarities. For example, if I'm talking to a group of teachers, I'm going to talk about how I teach in the classroom and what things work for me and what things don't work for me. Or if I were talking to a group of college students, I would tell them, you know, I was a college student once. I've been in your shoes. I've been under the stress of midterms, finals, working, being stressed out after a long day. So I want to relate to their problems so they're interested in what I'm talking about. Secondly, planning a lesson. This benefits both the teacher and the student. Learn as much as you can. Being a subject matter expert helps you sound educated. Most importantly, this allows you to be ready for any unexpected questions that could be asked. And we all know that they always ask questions that are way out there in left field, not pertaining to anything that you've talked about. So if you're a subject matter expert, as long as you do your research and you know what you're talking about, when someone asks you, a question that's way out there in left field, you're gonna know how to answer to it. You're gonna know how to relate to it if you do your research and if you know your audience. So you'll be expecting it. Secondly, organize a lesson so it's easily understood. Know what layout is more effective for you. Either the cause and effect layout, or you can do the pros and the cons, or the topic. For me, right now I'm doing a topic lesson, so I'm talking about a certain topic, and sometimes that works better for other people, and etc. There's always more. Always support your information, if it be with clarification, proof, humor, and visual. You can have a PowerPoint, and sometimes this helps students. A lot of times teachers are even requiring students to make PowerPoints. That way they understand their information that they're coming and teaching in front of a classroom also. So just always know your lessons and be able to support that information and know what you're talking about. Third and lastly is presenting your information. If you know your audience, presenting the information always comes a lot easier. This is the most important part. You can do everything, but if you can't present the information, you can't do, everything goes downhill from there. So communicate what has been prepared. Whenever you do a lesson, you're always going to have your beginnings, your endings, and your transitions. The beginnings, like I did at the beginning of my briefing, I mentioned what I'll be discussing, and towards the end, you always want to keep it short but positive, but always reiterate those main points. But most importantly is a transition used to move from one topic to the next. This is when you lose a lot of students in a classroom. I've been observing a little bit, and making that transition from one lesson plan to the next is the hardest thing for a teacher to do. So it's the most important thing to do when teaching a lesson. Secondly, use effective physical and vocal behavior. For example, talk about your eye contact, body movement, gestures, facial expressions. Eye contact is always important. Just by being a good listener and making eye contact, it's important because you know that you're interested and you're serious about what you're talking about. So eye contact is a big plus. Facial expressions, a smile. A smile can go a long way in life. I work at a doctor's office, and I always try to keep a positive attitude and have a smile on my face, because some people don't see that every day. So just having a smile on your face can go a long way. Also, for your voice and quality and volume, it's important to know the quality of the voice, if you're talking too low, too high. So that's always important when doing a lesson. In conclusion, a leadership development minor will prepare you to teach any class at any subject. Are you prepared to pass your knowledge on to others? Upon completion of your leadership development minor, you will recognize the audience, prepare lesson plans, and present information with ease. Start by fully applying yourself today. Lastly, I want to leave you with a Bible verse. Titus 2, verse 7 says, "And you yourself must be an example to them by doing good works of every kind. Let everything you do reflect the integrity and seriousness of your teaching." Thank you, and have a good night.